So hey everybody, welcome to Max puzzle number 1. These puzzles simulate something that you might come up with in your conceptualization or discussion of a piece and want to realize in Max. They're not particularly experimental, they're more practical because that's still where we are in Max, just doing the basic, simple, practical things that we tend to want to do when using media in live performance. Of course, Max is much broader than that, and there is this whole dimension of Max producing novel and unpredictable results. But a lot of times we want predictable results that it's hard to know or understand how we would achieve using any sort of packaged software. So in this puzzle, we're just imagining that the piece, whatever the piece may be, created this need for a live camera to fade in periodically, and when it fades out to be replaced by a different video. So every 3 seconds, it fades to the live camera and then fades to the next video, and then fades to the live camera and fades to the next video. And you know, there are many ways to achieve this using other tools, but this is exactly the kind of thing that Max is built for. Like it exists to create processes like this, and those processes can be very predictable, like this process, or as we move further along with Max, they can be very responsive to environmental factors, they can include a lot of randomness, and they can even include some forms of machine learning and artificial intelligence. So let's take a look at how we might approach this problem. Now, this is Max puzzle number 1, and I'm going to do Max puzzle number 1 along with you. Max puzzle number 2, you're on your own for. So follow along with me here carefully to see how I'm approaching the problem so that you can take, if not a similar approach, an approach that's informed by my approach in solving the problem. And I'll just start with what I know. I know I'm going to need a world. I know I'm going to need some movies connected to a layer. I know I'm going to need a jit.grab to another layer. And that may not be apparent to you immediately that you need 2 layers here. But remember that right now we don't have any mechanism for fading between videos besides fading the opacity of a layer. So if you want to fade from one image to another, for right now, we're using 2 separate layers. And as was pointed out, there is also the jit.xfade object, which is a very handy way to fade between 2 videos, but it comes with some difficulties, like the videos needing to be in the same aspect ratio, meaning the same ratio of width to height. And we just don't want to deal with that stuff right now when we don't have to. We can just put them on 2 separate layers, and layers automatically adapt to the aspect ratio of the image. So we can turn on our world and set these to volume 0, turn on our grab. There's the grab on layer 2, and we can still see this other video is running underneath. And so what's our approach going to be to this? Well, to start with, we want to be able to fade between the layers. And in order to do that, we have all of those various ways to set the color attribute. We can use the pack version, and all we're going to change is the transparency. And with everything in Max, you know, at this point, at the point that you've built anything, even the simplest aspect of the patch, just make sure it works. Make sure that you are actually controlling the opacity of the layer. Before you hook up any more complicated structure, just make sure the simple structure works. Okay, that works. And we know that we want to fade this over time, and that's our line object. And a couple of people have said, I need to really wrap my head around the line object. This is another case of, sort of like with PAC, with a lot of these objects, the line object does so little. Line is just an intensely straightforward object. It draws a line of values. It draws a ramp of values. It counts from one thing to another, from 0 to 1 over 1 second. And goes from 0 to 1 over 1 second. It does nothing else. It doesn't have any more sophisticated function than that. And this comma format is just because if you send any number to line, it will jump immediately to that number. So if I send line a 0, it outputs a 0. If I send line a 1, it outputs a 1. And here, by putting a comma in a message, I'm sending these messages sequentially. I'm saying jump to 0, and then smoothly ramp to 1 over 1 second. And that's exactly what it does. So it's fine. Take the time you need, ask the questions that you have, but just remember, as a touchstone, almost every object you're going to use on a daily basis has a very, very simple function. And if you think the function is so simple that the object seems almost useless, that's probably close to the truth. What good is it? Well, it replaces our hand in scrolling this number box. Don't need 2 number boxes there. Instead of having to manually fade this video out, we can now use the line to automatedly fade it in. Now, this is not exactly how we want this to work. What we want to do is we want to be able to fade it in and out. So we want to be able to go from 1 to 0. And toggle is always our friend there. 1s and 0s. So here's another way of formatting a 1 second fade out and fade in, because we're sending the message 1/1000, meaning move to 1 over 1 second. And now we're sending the message 0/1000, which means move to 0 over 1 second. So now we've got our ability to fade in and out on both of our layers. Okay, and what we want to happen is we want every 3 seconds to see the other layer. Well, we know that when a line is done, it sends a bang out its right outlet. So we can take that bang and delay it by 3 seconds. So when this line reaches its destination, something else will happen. What will happen? Well, we could flip a toggle. We want to switch between 1 and 0 states. So this means that this toggle, wait 3 seconds when the line is done, and then flip it. Wait 3 seconds when the line is done, and then flip the toggle again. So switching back and forth between the 0 and 1 states. So you might have come up with a different solution. There are other solutions for that, but that is, just based on the objects that you know, that is something you would have potentially arrived at, that the output of the line can cause a toggle to flip. And if we just feed that back in here, it's already working. Fade in, wait 3 seconds, fade out. Fade in, wait 3 seconds, fade out. Okay, and now you're saying, all right, all this has to do is the opposite. So we want whenever this is 1, we want this to be 0. Whenever this is 0, we want this to be 1. So we could do select 1, 0. And when it's 1, set the other one to 0. When it's 0, set the other one to 1. We're just inverting the value. And then basically, with the exception of switching movies, we're done. Like a simple thought process through the basic objects that you know reveals that this can be done with a straightforward patch. Now this, I think, is inelegant, and you probably are saying, well, yeah, I know you always show us less than when flipping toggles. And right, that's a great way to do it. Is 1 less than 1? No, it's not. So it's going to report false. Is 0 less than 1? Yes, it is. So it's going to report true. A 0 becomes a 1, a 1 becomes a 0. And there's other math objects as well. Probably the simpler one really is equal to 0. Same idea. Is 1 equal to 0? No, so 1 becomes a 0. Is 0 equal to 0? Yes, so 0 becomes a 1. So, using logic to invert is very, very common in the computer. And this is not a Max thing. This is a computing thing. This is just how computers think, in a way. So the other thing that we need to do is we just need to step through these movies. Counter 1 through 4. We'll step through the 4 movies. And we play the movie with an integer, so that's all we need there is to connect them together. The thing is, we want the movie to switch when we're not seeing it. We want the counter to be triggered when this toggle is set to 1. Because the moment that toggle is set to 1, we're still seeing the live camera. So, select 1. And now we're seeing another movie. It's going to switch movies while I'm on the screen and show us the next movie. Play that movie until I replace it, switch movies, and give us the new movie. So there we have it. Now, we're not quite done, because if this were a piece of software we're going to use in a piece, we want to be able to turn it on with a single button press. And this is something that you need to start thinking about in your patches. How are they controlled? You know them, and so you might know a sequence of things to press or a way in which you want to manipulate the patch. But you can build things for other people to use. And in fact, that's, I don't know if it's the majority of what Max is used for, but it's certainly a large portion. Most of the patches I make in professional work are going to be run by someone else. Some of them are for me, but a lot of them are going to have an operator, or I'm writing a component of a patch or a patch for someone to use in their work. So think in terms of interface. What can we combine? What can we simplify? For instance, we can turn the grab on with the same toggle that turns on the world. And we also definitely want to set the volume to 0 as soon as we turn on the world. But maybe we want a separate start button for the process itself. And where do we want the process to start? Do we want the process to start with the live camera, or do we want to start the process with no image on the screen? These decisions are things you're going to want to think about when you're thinking about how this patch is going to be used, how this patch is going to be controlled. So we can start them both at 0, and we have no off switch here, so we want to interrupt this with a G gate. And we want to make sure that G-gate is on when the world is turned on. Our button takes us to a blank screen and starts the process. And the process is going to start with a 1 being sent to this pack. Like so. But it doesn't start the movie. So we also can use, for instance, this 4th inlet of counter, set counter to number immediately. That will start the movie. Let's try this again. Gonna stop it. This button should be separate. This should be a clear button. And this should be a start button. So we clear it, then we start it. It starts with the movie playing. Changes movies. That's not the behavior we want. I see what the issue is here. We want to be setting this toggle at the beginning, not this one. This is actually just a display toggle. This is the business toggle here. So we can even take that toggle out. It's no longer necessary. And you'll just set that toggle to start the piece. So let's stop it, clear it, reset it, and start it. Starts with the video, fades to me, changes videos hopefully, and yep, fades to the next video, fades back to me, changes videos while it's on me, fades back to the next video. Yeah, so here we go. This is a performance usable patch. We turn it on, clear it, and we start it. And of course, this can be encapsulated so that we just have a basic control interface outside of the encapsulated patch. This is what whoever's going to be running this patch or starting this patch is going to see. And just remember that whenever you encapsulate, it is remaking everything in the patch. So there might be something that is going to break for you. I think in our case we're okay, but you always want to recheck your patch after you encapsulate it. Let's try it. We'll turn it on, clear, and start. Works great. Let's make sure it switches videos. Yes, it does. The only thing I think I'd change about this is, the order of buttons here. I would say we want to clear and then start. And it's smart. It changes the patch cables around. On, clear, start. Great. So that's solving a puzzle fully, not just figuring out the functionality and how it works, but thinking about then, what is the interface going to be like? Can we start this thing? Can we stop this thing? I mean, actually, we can't stop it. We can clear it, but it's still running. So we do need to add a stop button as well, because we can get it started. We can't stop it. And that's a pretty straightforward thing with one tricky bit. So we can make a stop button We can use that stop button to fade our video out. Once the video is faded out, we can stop the movie playback. So we can just wait a second and stop the movie playback, like so. And of course, this is becoming a rat's nest, so we can use send and receive. Say send to line. Receive to line. Another one over here. Receive to line. And then we can look for anything else that goes to both lines, like this 0. And also use a send to line there. And one thing that's nice to do with send and receive is color all your matching send and receives the same. So it's easy to visually find them on the screen. And then this can be a send to movie, to move, give it a different color. R to move. Anything else we can clean up with a send and receive? Yeah, we can do here send start and give that its own color. That goes to receive start here and receive start there. Okay, so that's a much, much cleaner screen. This should be 0, 1000, because we want it to fade out. Okay, yeah. So we're fading out the video. When the video is faded out, we're stopping the movie. And then we need to keep it from restarting. And there's actually going to be 2 steps to that. First of all, there might be a bang trapped in this delay waiting to come out when we stop the piece. So we want to stop the delay. And there's a message to a delay called stop, that if there's a button press waiting in that delay to be delivered, the stop will remove it, will delete it. So that's useful. So the other thing we want to do is to make sure to turn off this G gate. And you can see that stopping your piece is sometimes more complicated than starting it. You need to think about a lot of things. What are all the processes that need to stop? And the last thing we need to consider is that these 2 patch cords are not actually passing through this G gate. They won't stop. We don't need to make 2 more G gates. We can just take these from the G gate instead. And now the movie will not be restarted. And the camera will not be faded back in. And this looks pretty good. You might want to add a couple more sends and receives if it's feeling messy to you. This, to me, is a pretty readable, compact patch. And we'll just test it one more time to make sure our stop button works. We start it, video comes on, video should fade to the camera. It does. If I stop it, it should fade out and be done. Yeah, all right. So that works. We've got a way to initialize it, attach to turning our world on, clear it, start it, and stop it. And so that's a completed solution to the puzzle.